Okay, welcome and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Slim Nation 101's podcast. Of course, my name is James Slim Overton, and I am your host, but more important, I am your friend. And we appreciate you joining us this morning. I have a special guest with me this morning, and we're going to have a one on one conversation. And his name is Wesley Vann, and he's from the city of Portsmouth, Virginia, and now residing in Atlanta, Georgia, or around the outskirts. He'll explain that later. But anyway, I'm glad and pleased and punched, as Hubert Humphrey used to say. Most people know who Hubert Humphrey was, but he used to say, "I'm pleased and punched to be here." So we started out, and let me stop the music. So okay, stop the music before I get up and start dancing. But anyway, we met at IC Northam, a historically black uh, high school, which is now one of the very few left that are still operating as a high school. I think we have IC Northam, Booker T in Norfolk, and I think Dumar and in DC is one of the ones. And there might be some others throughout the state, but I think we are one of the few that are still left that was originally open for black students and still operating that way.
hmm
Diverse uh, students population now, but the history is there, and that's where we met. We met in English class. We had Miss Mabel Haywood, one of the teachers at IC Northam, and
One
we
of the
talked about
legends.
legends, one of the legends, and
One of
you
the
probably
legends.
every classroom from the first floor to the third floor at IC Northam, and there was a legend in every one of those classrooms.
That's right.
That's the way it was. And one thing we talked about yesterday when we had a brief conversation was how you didn't want to go in there unprepared
Mm-mm.
because those teachers, especially Miss Haywood, would come to your desk with her little black book and show you her putting a zero in that book.
Mm-hmm.
And besides being embarrassing, a zero could really mess up your average. So you
And
made
I was
sure.
struggling with that anyway.
Yeah, I'm telling you, zero, it goes into what? Zero times? But,
Mm-hmm.
so it can mess up your average. So, and most of the teachers were there. They were serious about preparing us for that world we were gonna face, and especially back then, I think both of us started. I think, Wesley, you started in '67, and I came in '68,
Yeah. Yeah.
'69. I went to Wilson first and then came to Norfolk.
Yeah. I
But,
was caught in that Virginia had that law that you could not start school if your birthday had if you turned 6, you had to be turning 6 before October 1st.
yeah, and
And
I
so
got caught, and that's why I started at 5.
you're right,
Because my birthday
right,
was September, but soon
right.
after I turned 6. So, but
But
anybody else, like you see, had to
mine
wait
was
a whole
October
year.
13th, so I had to sit out a year. I had to sit on
Yeah.
the bench for another year, before I could get in the game. But I'm gonna make one little correction, Slim. You might not remember this. We met before high school.
Oh, okay.
We were at this Sahid Club
Okay.
at
Yeah,
the Jack and Jill Ball.
yeah, yeah.
We
And
used
we
to.
talked
Yeah, I
about it
wasn't
before we
Jack and
did.
Jill, but
I,
Carolyn and Diane and Lil Jean and all them, they were part of that society.
yeah.
And I would get invited every
Well,
year. That's why I met you and Sticky, Keith Watts.
oh,
Uh,
right.
who else was there? That was Portsmouth. Those
Yeah,
were
that
the
was cool.
children of
And
Portsmouth.
funny you should say that because okay, yeah, you're right, you're right, and
hmm
I talked about that. I wasn't a member either, but I got
Mm-mm.
invited. I might as well been. I got invited to everything because
Everything,
my
yeah.
parents were in that circle,
Mm.
and I often talk about how that circle was and what they had to do because during their day they couldn't go everywhere, so they created their own little clubs and organizations and everything. So life went on for them. I mean, us coming up as little young pups, we knew
Yeah,
no different. We just saw them doing their thing on a high level, on a high scale,
we
and we
didn't
just
know.
thought everything was,
Yeah,
everything was right.
life with life. We we weren't in grown folks' conversations.
Yeah.
back in the late 50s, early 60s. We didn't. I heard I was at a it was called a concert and conversation, and Warren Buffett's the what does he do? He's a musician,
Hmm.
and somebody in the audience asked, he would play a little bit and then he'd have a conversation. Somebody in there asked him, they said, Mr. Buffett, when did you find out that your father was one of the richest men in the world? And he said, I was in college when I found out because he was on the front cover of Forbes magazine, and my roommate ran in there and said, "You didn't tell me that Warren Buffett was your daddy." You blah 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 blah. He said, "I." So he called his mama. He said, "Mama, what is this? They talking about daddy, the richest man in the world." Your mama said, "You go to class today?" Yeah. Oh, you got homework to do? Yeah. She said, "Well, you need to go do it because that's grown folks' business right there." And
Yeah,
this
yeah,
kid
they was
was
so
in
that.
college, so it was like that for us,
Yeah, yeah,
and you didn't know if you were poor, because they didn't talk about that in front of children. Now, these kids today, I was watching a meme on Facebook, and the little child was teaching the little sister, trying to teach her how to spell a word and what's a frog and all this. And she said, "You get this right?" She said, "Mama, did the child support come this week?" Now, what a 6-year-old know about child
yeah,
support?
yeah.
you
You
know,
didn't even know
so
child
in
support existed.
that time,
You
yes,
just know that there was food on the table and those
that's
little
right,
things that you wanted to do.
that's
And
right.
before I go into Malcolm just a little bit more, I had a video the other day. I talked about privilege and you mentioned about grown folks talk. So I didn't realize how privileged I was until you know Christmas. I got all these toys. Raised as an only kid, but I was
Mhm.
adopted and had three brothers. Found that out much later in life. But I had all these things, and I thought everybody in the neighborhood was like that until I started going out and visiting some of my neighbors' house, and they might have five children, and they still didn't have as much as I had under the tree.
Right,
And that made me realize and it made me really share a lot of my things. I could have gone one way or the other, been more understanding and share or held my nose up, and say, "Oh,
right,
you
right.
ain't got it," because some people were like that,
Yeah.
to be
But
true.
see, I was like you. I was only child growing up,
Mm,
and it my mother's challenge with me was that I always thought that the more you give your toys away to people, the more they like you.
yeah.
And it was always, in Mount Hermon, where I grew up,
Mhm.
on
Pretty
Mount
much
Vernon
like this.
Avenue, that 1450 block, we had janitors, we had school teachers, we had preachers, we had the editor of the Journal and Guide
Mm,
lived there. Then you had Dr. Vick and Dr. Green. They lived there. Dr. Green lived there for a little while.
mhm,
So we had truck drivers. So everybody in that one little block looked out for each other.
mhm,
That was when the neighborhoods really were true neighborhoods. And I guess that was during Jim Crow laws, so we really had to be observant.
mhm.
My father was in the Navy at the time, and
Oh, man.
then after he got out, they figured out that won't go work, so he moved to New York. Uh, my grandfather, my mother's father, he was killed in a train what is it, Southwestern? Not Southwestern. What's the name of that train? Southern,
So,
the Norfolk thing, because they're headquartered out of
Norfolk
here.
Southern, I believe. Yeah, Norfolk
Yeah,
Southern.
so he was killed right there on the West
He
Norfolk
moved to
Bridge.
Atlanta, didn't he?
Yeah,
He
sure
moved to
did.
Atlanta. They
Yeah,
were
yeah,
they were
yeah.
people in downtown Norfolk for years.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Mhm,
So yeah, he was killed on that. The guy at the West Norfolk Bridge couldn't figure out if he could. The train was coming and a cargo ship was coming, and he had to figure out whether to raise the bridge and let the ship through, or lower the bridge, let the train over, and stop the ship. Well, for me, that would have been, I don't know whether if I should shit or go blind. So he decided to close one eye and fart, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. So, but he raised the bridge up, and my grandfather's train went, he was conductor on the train, and the train went over in there and killed him. But
Mhm.
the neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood, you might remember Pony, Leon Thomas.
I believe so.
Yeah, he played. He was running back. He was a smooth boy, pretty boy.
Yeah.
He and his brother Wayne, was a wide receiver for Norcom, and they looked out for us because it was a house full of women, and they looked out for us. And I could eat at Pony's house. His mother would war pony. His mother
Oh,
made
yeah. Okay. That's it. Yeah.
yeah.
He
He
was around there good for,
His
yeah.
mother made the best rolls on Sunday
Mm-hmm.
afternoon. I would just go there and sit there and eat a plate of them. I ain't want no meat. I ain't want no vegetable. I ain't want nothing. I just wanted the rolls.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would go there. When I got home, my mom said, "Time to eat." I said, "Mom, I'm full." Because I'd have been through the neighborhood and ate there.
Yeah, well, that's the way it was out here in Truxton too. You'd be
Yeah.
over visiting your friend's house, and they got time to eat. Everybody ate. The
Well,
kids were
my
there.
dad's twin brother, Uncle Leslie, lived in Truxton for a little while. Actually, Uncle Leslie lived in a whole lot of places,
Yeah.
but he lived in Truxton for a little while. Uncle Gene was in Brighton. I think he
Mhm.
was in Brighton for a little while. And Douglas Park. They had a house out in Douglas Park.
Yeah. Well, all those communities were similar then, and
Yeah,
all the
man.
stuff.
And then see, now that's when we got into Norcom. Now, after going, see, I went to Clark. Matter of fact, I went to Mount Hermon Elementary. That was all black. With the S.H. Clark, that was all black. With the I.C. Norcom, that was all black. And Tuskegee.
Hmm.
So when I came out of college and got my first job at Tallhammer's working in sales, I think you
Yeah.
and I, were you
Yeah.
working?
I was working there then. We were both in Richmond at the
Yeah,
same time,
I
and
was in Richmond. Were you in
we
Richmond?
were yeah. I was right after we were living there for a while until the baby was about to be born. That's when we came back. But you
Mhm.
were at one mall, the Tallhammer's, and I was at another,
I was at Cloverleaf.
and I was at Regency. I think that
Yeah,
one
yeah, and
out
that's
in
what I did.
the county. Yeah,
And I think I called over there looking for something to see if y'all had some product. Because during that time, if you had a shirt or something that a customer needed, you could order it over. It would take a week to get it over there
yeah.
because you didn't have UPS and FedEx and all that stuff. And you ain't had none of that stuff.
And
How did
reading there,
we make
you
it
had
in
to
them
get your
days,
car and
man?
drive it.
How did we make it in those days? And it was, oh Lord, if we could just, and I called over there, and you answered the phone. I'll never
Yeah, that's
forget it.
when we
I
found
said,
out both of us.
I
Wait a
said,
minute.
boy, this voice sounds familiar. Slim?
Yeah,
You said, yeah, this was, yeah. Oh Lord, we got to get together.
yeah,
We got to get together. So did, and we did, and that was fantastic, though. I
yeah,
know.
yeah. That was your first job coming out. It was mine as well.
Yeah, well,
I was still
I
working.
had this idea that I was going to come out, and for every year that I was in college, that there was a ratio,
Hmm.
and I was going to make $5,000 for every year
Hmm.
that I was in school, and I just happened to cram four into five, so I figured I would make $25,000 coming out of college. And that during that time, twenty five
Yeah,
thousand dollars.
you were
Oh
talking
hell,
money there.
yes, sir. Teachers won't make it but $400 a month.
Yeah,
And I said, "Oh yes, this. I guess that 25,000 would be equivalent to somebody coming out of college saying they're gonna make $100,000 a year. Because the
yeah.
money went along with my car payment. My little first car I bought, I remember it was 70. $3.82. I think it was. It was a Toyota Corolla, 5 speed lift back.
Mm,
Oh, gorgeous, baby, it was gorgeous. Single man driving something like that,
yeah,
and but uh, actually, when I got an ultimatum, because my mother told me that summer, she said, "You take the summer off, summer '76, and enjoy yourself." And you done worked hard for the last 18 years, so just
yeah, yeah. Because you went and
enjoy
like most
yourself.
people went straight through, high
Yeah,
school.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I did. And by that September, she said, "Okay, it's time for you to go to work." And I said, "Okay." So I started getting up, and I'd wake up about 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I was always the party guy. I
Yeah,
partied all night long and get up the next day at 2 o'clock and say I'm going to look for a job.
yeah.
So Uncle Jimmy, Dr. Green, Dr. James L. Green, he told me one day, he said, "Wes, all the good jobs are gone by 12 o'clock." And I said, because Grady was still in school at this time, and so
Mhm.
I would, and that was my road dog. We were running hard. Me, him, and Doug. Now
Yeah,
Doug was working. Doug was at the shipyard. He was working. But me and Grady was in school, and I spent a lot of time on Norfolk State campus just hanging out. And finally, they put me in the trick. Somebody told me I need to write a book. They put me in the trick. They got me. I never said she was. You remember she headed the newspaper at Norfolk. And she said, "You want to? I'm going to a journalism conference for high school newspaper at the University of Virginia." So, University of Virginia, oh,
yeah.
seriously,
Go.
we in the party, baby, on the weekend too. We stayed at a hotel. Yeah, we stayed at a hotel. Okay, so I go there, get to the hotel, party all that weekend. I never said, "Okay, we going back to Richmond. We gonna meet mom and all them." Because they had come up. Bernice, the baby sister, was living in Richmond at the time, and they sent me to the store and told me to take my
Uh,
uncle's Volkswagen. And I took that Volkswagen to the store. When I got back, my suitcase was sitting in the middle of the living room floor. And I had a date that night. I tell you who I was dating. I was dating Burl Jones. Not Burl Jones, Burl Fairclough. Whew.
yeah.
And
Didn't you date
oh,
Blue? No, no. I,
and
both of
I
them
said,
were fine.
I had a date at 8 o'clock. I got to go. You know what, mama and them, they playing a game here. My uncle said, "Wes, let's go in the kitchen." I said, "Oh,
Yeah.
going to the kitchen." The
Kitchen
kitchen
talk.
conversations, they
Yeah, that
were
was where all the serious conversations went on.
that was serious there, better. That kitchen conversation was serious. He said, "Wes, your mama and your aunts are gone. They left you here. Um, it was my birthday too. I'll never forget. It's October 15th. My birthday was on the 13th. He said, and you have until October the 31st to have a job. And if you don't have one by then, you can stay here while you're looking. But if you don't have one by then, you will be put out and you will be homeless." Oh my God. Really? That Monday,
See how serious those kitchen talks were?
yeah. That Monday, man, we
You made
hit
it on the
the street.
line.
I went from, I go downtown, park the car, and just walk from business to business to business
Mhm.
with the Xerox, with the IBM, hit all the big boys first. And, integration wasn't, but this 76, and we integrated in 68. So I was like 7 years, 8 years old. White folks were still adjusted. I was still adjusted.
Yeah, it was still
And finally, I get to Tallheimers and go up there, and they hire me. Now, remember, I told you my goal was to make $25,000 a year. They said, "We're going to pay you $1.25 an hour." I said, "Whoa, I made it, baby." Thank you, Jesus. And I mean, this was October 30th that I finally got that job. And I told Lord, I tell Lord the other day, my uncle, I said, man, if it hadn't been for you in that kitchen conversation, I'd probably still be sitting at the house all day
Yeah,
doing
making
that.
2 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's how it went. You know,
Yeah,
that's how it
let,
went. It was a
let me
combination.
let me go back quickly, and then we'll get into Tuskegee and your experience there. But going back to Norcom a little bit, how much do you feel? You know, we all know how those teachers tried to prepare us, and I got to mention you in the band too with Mr.
Hmm.
Peters, and I think your last year, you were drum major, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right. I
and
was
I
band
don't know what.
captain and drum major.
Yeah, what the spot opened up or something, but you were quite entertaining drum major, as I recall, but
Yeah.
you fit right in there. But as far as Mr. Fields and being in the band and the other teachers we had, how do you feel like that prepared you for that next level of education, which was their goal for all of us students? But
I think it's like I mentioned to you yesterday. In those days, teachers were teachers,
mhm.
and they were in the profession because they wanted to teach. You know, I lived with one. I never
One for the
was one.
money, one for the money.
Yeah, they won't in it for definitely won't in it for the money. Okay.
All of them had
Uh,
second jobs. Yeah.
yeah, I remember I Evelyn's first paycheck after she finished Virginia State, and it was $357.10. We were so excited, and they
Mm,
got paid on the 10th. But that's what teachers did. They were in the profession, and they made it a profession because they wore shirt. The men wore shirt and ties. The ladies wore dresses and stockings. You know, they wore shoes. You go in the classroom today, you can't tell the student from the teacher. The teachers did not want to be your friend. You know, they wanted to teach you. And at Norcom, even at Mount Hermon and S.H. Clark, they taught you, they prepared you for life because, see, during that time, Jim Crow was still alive and well.
yeah.
Yeah, and it didn't look like he was going anywhere. We were starting the civil rights movement was starting to move, but still we had to learn to maneuver. We had to be able to move around and get to where we had to go because you had the Rufe Holmeses that were
Mm,
out there. And then you had Emery Fears, you know, he carried that band, he carried us all over the country.
yeah. Convening
And
with much
and the
larger
city, the
bands.
city wouldn't even recognize what we were doing. You know what I
Right.
mean? They, if we had to raise sell donuts to go. We had the greatest performance we had was the Battle of the Bands. That was in I think 19, I want to say 70, and it was eight of the top bands in the country had been selected to perform at the Civic Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Only eight bands out the entire country, and we were one of them.
Y'all
And we
were you
turned
the
that
only
did North of Rock and
predominantly
turned it
black
up.
band?
Mhm.
Were you the only predominantly black band out of those
Oh,
eight?
of course, of
Mhm.
course, of course. We were the only. I mean, you had Cardinal Doherty. We were pretty much the only black folks, let alone the black band, because Wilson High School out of Wilson, Pennsylvania, Cardinal Doherty. There was one out of Mississippi. It was one from Michigan. Well, I wish Michael Reed were here because he remembers all of this.
Mhm.
And uh I forget what and then here come little old Northam with the little raggedy pants on because
Yeah.
we couldn't get new uniforms. Cardinal Doherty flew into Philly from Rome,
Wow.
and they had been in Rome to perform for the Pope, and the Pope pinned a little pin on them. And those kids were so disciplined when they got off. I was intimidated when they got off the bus. You saw kids come off the bus and nobody said a word. They just fell right in formation. I was like, oh my God. You remember Racket Bradshaw?
The last name he was evidently he was a band member, right?
Yeah, yeah. He played drums. Little short guy. His name was
Mhm.
Racket Bradshaw. I forget his real name. But Racket, a lot of folks, I don't know their real name. I just
Yeah.
remember their
We
nickname.
we went through the whole 4 years. not knowing
Yeah,
their real name
that's
until
it.
we got out. And,
Or you didn't know who was sisters and brothers. At least
yeah,
I did.
oh
You
yeah,
know,
yeah. Found out later after we get out of school and were adults and found out that they were brother and sister. It might
you
be it
kidding
might
me?
be two or three brothers and sisters that knocked them at the same time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you never knew that they were related.
I
Because you
was
didn't know
here.
their names.
I was here in Atlanta and met. I knew Cecilia Whitehead's sister, but I didn't know that they were sisters.
Yeah,
I didn't find that out
yeah,
until she came here for the National Federal Employee Association conference, and I think Lynn had to speak and host that thing. And they said, "Wes, how you doing? Blah blah blah. I haven't seen you. My sister Cecilia." I said, "What?"
yeah. Because they had different last names. She was
Yeah.
Vanessa
So
Williams.
anyway, bracket goes on. He's drumming, and the little one of the guys from I think it was the Wilson High School. He said, "Man, I sure did. I really did like how you played that drum." He said,
Mm,
"Show me that cadence again." So right quick, because everybody had to be in practice, we were all mingling and talking. Racky gets out, and the white guy says, "That's really nice. Let me see if I can get it." He took one hand, played that entire cadence. Racket took his drum off, took his sticks, put them in his pocket, went and stood outside on the curbside, ready to go back to my room. I'm totally embarrassed. Because, see, these kids grew up, those other band members, they grew up taking private lessons.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they had been playing since they were in elementary school.
And probably their facilities and everything
Oh,
were,
yeah. Oh,
you
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you
They
know,
were top dog. You know, they taking trumpet lessons from Doc Severinsen from the
yeah,
Tonight Show.
yeah.
You
They
know.
didn't take the summers off and come back and
Mm-mm. When we had to take summers off, half our band members had to take summers off to work.
to work, right? You
So
couldn't.
to help, we had to help take care of a lot of stuff that was going on around the house. You know,
Yeah,
so we didn't have that privilege, but to be there
yeah,
and to have it instilled in us that we were just as good, if not better, than those other schools that were there. But Portsmouth put one little blurb, I'll never forget it, in the Virginia Pilot Ledger Star. They had that one little blurb. I see Norco wins Parade of Champions in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
yeah. And that was all they had. And
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to mention one more thing before we talk about Tuskegee and talk about Mr. Fields. I have to mention him and the crew he had around him. One of the
mhm.
most amazing uh, things y'all did, performances y'all had with that spinning wheel performance y'all had. Remember that song, "A Spinning Wheel"? What
Yeah,
the
yes, yes. And it
that
was a moving
that
parts to it.
performance, whoever put that together, because y'all actually, and this was a high school band now. I remember
Yeah,
being at the stadium and seeing y'all perform that, where you actually had a wheel spinning, you know,
yes, sir.
you had,
And
and
moving.
it was a song that was out at the time.
Yes,
It
sir.
wasn't something from
Mr.
way
Fields
back.
did that
Like,
by himself.
yeah,
He was a
that
genius.
was amazing
He
for a high
was
school band.
he,
You saw that in college.
he was a field engineer,
Hmm.
and he studied under Paul Ravelli, who was the head band director at Michigan State. And he and Paul, from the story he told me, they had gotten their masters in music together from, I want to say Michigan State. I can't, don't quote me on that, but it was somewhere like Columbia. I think it
Hmm.
was up at Columbia. And he they learned all that. If you remember watching Michigan State on Saturdays or Purdue and all them,
Yeah,
well, see, that's where Fields he ran around with them. He didn't run around with the Book T. Washer of Norfolk or Book T. Washer of Suffolk, those band directors. He was running with the college boys.
yeah, he talked about
And
that when we interviewed. I'm so glad we got a chance to do that
oh man,
with
yeah,
him, and that's forever enshrined in our archives of
he was a
shows we did with
he
him.
was a genius. He
Yeah,
was but what he also did was that the only time I ever got sent home in my 12 years of secondary education was by Mr. Fields.
the
And I was
band was the
amazed
home.
because what he did, he told me, he said, Van, take a crew, go down there, take all the band captains, go down to the field and see if we can go outside and practice because it had been raining. I said, okay. We get down there. I got Charlie Crawford, Jesse Debs, Randy Hardy. Who else was there? Somebody else. I think Racky Bradshaw. I get all down. So we go check the field coming back on that back wing of Northam. They all up and down the stairs. They making noise. They peeping in the classroom. I came on back and said, Mr. Fields, I think we going on to practice. It's a little muddy, but not much. He said, okay. We get out there. Fields, he said, Van, come to my office. Y'all out there playing in the hallways. I said, but I wasn't, it wasn't me. I came straight back, Mr. Fields. I'm right here. No, you go home and don't come back till you bring your mama. And sent me to the office. I got my pink slip and went home. They said I can go back, boy. My mama was hot. Oh my God. But
Probably
what
more.
he did, yeah, what
Yeah,
he taught
well,
me,
he was. I understand he was tough, and one thing I
yeah.
say about the band, I think if you look at the percentage of band members that went on to college with band scholarships,
Oh God.
that probably wouldn't have had the opportunity. Because I remember when I was at Union, okay, we were playing Winston Salem, we were playing, in all those schools that were in the CIAA at the time,
Hmm.
and every time one of those schools came to our campus, it was two or three Malcolm nights
That's right.
in that band. It might have been more, but I noticed two or three from my class or those classes in the '70s that
That's
would
right.
still be at
That's
there.
right. Yeah. And so
Yeah,
what he taught me that he
yeah,
said, man, the reason you got sent home is because you were the leader. You were in charge. And when your crew falls or somebody falls, that falls back on you. I
indeed.
took that to life,
Yeah,
and all the jobs I've had where I've been managing and directing and all that at Norfolk State at the Fulton County District Attorney's Office. I always remember that echoes in my ear to this day. So
yeah.
if I'm in charge, baby, we're gonna get it right.
And
Cause I ain't gonna get sent home no more.
that's why I said it was a lot of lessons learned at Dicey Norcom outside of the classroom. Of
That's
course,
right.
we had to get that classroom work, but those lessons outside. I mean,
Yeah,
my
I,
basketball coach.
I
You
truly
know,
believe that Norcom was the founding institution of global learning. Where the
indeed.
holistic learning, where they taught the entire body of that student. They just didn't give you the book knowledge, but they gave you growth knowledge. They gave you how to work, how to look when you get on the job. They kept us like that,
Yeah, I
and that
remember.
was that was the beginning of it.
Yeah, my basketball coach was my biology teacher. So
Yeah,
it was no,
thank
certain guy. If you didn't do your work, like you say, some coaches and not taking any slack that they might have taught driver's ed or something like that. But my basketball coach, Bobby Baker, was
Yes, sir.
biology.
That's right. I remember that. I
Yeah,
remember
you
that
know,
well.
in his class during the day, and he run us to death in the afternoon.
That's right.
Sometimes I
Coach
wonder,
Savage, Coach Smith,
Coach Savage, all them
boy,
guys.
they go to your house and figure out what's
Yeah.
going on. Get out there and get in trouble if you want. They jack you
Oh,
up, baby.
well, I had to. It was nothing for we said this yesterday. It was nothing to go to something with your parents, and these guys would be there. A
Yeah.
social event, and they would be there. So you couldn't act up,
Mm-mm.
because you couldn't act up at school because you would see them that weekend at some function,
Some
and
fun. Sooner or later, you was
they would
gonna.
tell
It was
on you.
nothing but church.
Yeah,
It was nothing but church.
how about that church? Right.
Yeah.
And Tuskegee was an experience too. HBCU, we call them now, well, black college back then, and
Hmm.
being away from home the first time, and the
Ooh.
history behind that institution, that educational institution, had
Yeah.
to be something. It had to be special when you get there. When you first walked on campus, you probably have heard a lot about it. What was your feeling, and how was that environment for you? I know, like you said, you were going to black schools all the way leading up to that, but this was a whole different level, even though it was
Yeah.
still predominantly black. But it was a
Yeah.
whole different level of education. You had more freedom. It was
Oh
up
yeah.
to
Ooh.
you.
Ooh.
You had, If you didn't want to go to class, you didn't have to go to class. Nobody was making you, but
That's right.
had a responsibility. You know, you had to do what you had to do.
It was an innate responsibility at Tuskegee to go to class because if you had that 12 years of foundation out of Portsmouth, you felt bad if
Yeah,
you didn't go to class. You
right.
know, it was like you tell your mama you sick, where you felt like you had, even in Tuskegee, if I said I ain't going to class today, I, for the first couple of years, I wouldn't even walk on campus because I was scared I was going to see a teacher. You know, I didn't know that I was just that wrong to do that.
Because you
I
weren't just
remember
a number. You weren't
my
just a number.
first day going to Tuskegee, Daryl Green and I, we my first flight, matter of fact, was flying to Alabama. We got up early that morning. It was now, unlike today's parents, they hadn't gone down there to Tuskegee before we got there to see what it was going to be about. You know,
Yeah.
we were 18 years old. So we had to go down there by ourselves. We had to handle the business. We had to pay the tuition. We had to get in the dormitory room. We fly down to get to the first day we went, August 27th. We go in there to fly and the plane doesn't take off. Something happened to the plane. And we just showed out that morning how we ain't never coming back. Oh, you can't tell me to do nothing no more because I'm grown. And we had to spend one more night at home after saying all that.
Hmm.
So, but the next day we got there, and the first thing I noticed about Tuskegee, I mean, we had to catch a flight from Norfolk to Atlanta, change flights in Atlanta, fly from Atlanta to Montgomery, get a bus from Montgomery to Tuskegee, catch a horse from the bus station to,
A
you know,
horse.
and finally get to the campus, you know. But it was hot. It
Of
was
course.
Alabama hot, baby. That's the first thing I'll never forget that because I even had the nerve to have a jacket on. And it was about 100 degrees that day, just as humid. I said, Alabama's hot. How did
Eh,
they pick cotton? I said, Greener, how did they pick cotton down here
Now,
on a day like today?
did
Hmm?
your dorms have air conditioning? Because the first dorm
Our,
I stayed in,
our dorm did.
or the
Our
first dorm
dorm.
I stayed in, didn't have air
Yeah.
conditioning, and
Yeah, our dorm.
especially you had to work your way up.
The rest of the freshmen, those that lived in the Emories, there were the original dormitories that were there, the Emories, the four Emories. They were made out of the rooms had cedar, that cedar wood, like in a cedar closet.
Yeah,
The rooms were lined, the walls were cedar. That cedar would heat up, but it kept it cool at the same time. You
yeah.
walk in there, you smell like you was in somebody's closet. And the room was about for two people was about as big as a closet. It literally was. It was just that small. And but the dorm Darla and I were in, our room we had air conditioning.
Mm.
Didn't work all the time,
Yeah.
but we had it. But we had it. And to be, Tuskegee wasn't a school that people in Portsmouth really talked about a lot.
Mm.
Uh, the only person I know, what was this guy's name? Oh Lord, he and I were gonna start a veterinary hospital together. Matter of fact, Dr. Gilbert had offered to give us his hospital when we graduated,
Mhm.
and we went down there. What was that boy's name? Anyway, we get down there, and it was just to be there and understanding the history of the school. You felt enlightened. You felt I have finally done something important for me as an 18-year-old. Look, I'm at Tuskegee's campus. Nobody, everybody else in Portsmouth, everybody was going to Virginia State, Norfolk State, Union, Winston Salem,
Yeah.
Shaw,
Yeah. All the
St. Aug, St. Paul, Howard, Hampton. They were going all there. But here go me and Green, and we going in the deep south. Now my grandmama was nervous because this was 71. '68 had been the big riots, and finally we had civil rights, and so she knew that Alabama still hadn't quite gotten there yet. They were
mm,
still battling the Civil War down there, so she was a little nervous, and I understood why. And she would say, "Don't walk nowhere by yourself at night, cause they'll get you. They gonna get you." So I really wouldn't. I was like, scared to death when I first got there, but after a while, I started gaining ground, and over the years, I got in the band there. Matter of fact, they wanted me to march, but I wouldn't. I just did concert and jazz.
mm,
And a friend of mine called me the other day. I hadn't talked to in years. Named Billy Perry. Billy was a piano player, and I played in the Tuskegee Jazz Band. I had the opportunity to play for George Wallace on his birthday,
oh,
and I played this song called "Moaning" by
not the comedian George Wallace, but
no
the stand in the door,
this
segregation now,
that's it that
forever. That
that's
George
right.
Wallace,
That George Wallace. I
right?
played for his birthday and broke him down to tears. I played the song called "Moaning" by Quincy Jones, and it was a beautiful trumpet piece in there. And if you did it right, you could feel the emote. And I did it and laid down the hatred for him that I should have had,
Hmm.
and say I'm gonna lift this man up because he's in a wheelchair by now. See,
Yeah,
he had got shot, his thought process. I think the man made a deal with God. You keep me around a little longer, I'm gonna fix everything I broke.
yeah. I'll make amends. I'll
Yeah,
make people look at me
yeah.
differently. You know.
So we did, and I ended up playing for him. Then Billy was a piano player, and he played. I forgot what he played in the band, but anyway, doing the jazz band, he played piano. We had the opportunity to play with the Commodores. You know, the Commodores were there
Yeah.
in
I was
Tuskegee, and
telling me
Lionel
yesterday.
Richie, and because my roommates by this time were all women.
Were they
So
there when you were there? Were they matriculating when you were there,
yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
they
Matter of fact,
already?
Lionel and I took business. We had a business administration class together.
Okay.
And yeah, and like the song "Easy Like Sunday Morning," he and I were sitting together one Sunday morning at the apartment, and stepped outside, twisted up a joint, and stood out there and said, "Man, it don't get no easier than this Sunday
Yeah,
morning." You
that was
know?
a real easy Sunday morning. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was easy.
But
Um,
that was also an experience, you know, and when I talk to people, I tell them, and it comes up about, you know, herb, reefer, stuff like that. And I said, well, you know,
mhm.
I'm a product of the '70s, you know, and that should tell you
Yeah, we
enough
the
right
sex,
there.
drugs, and rock and roll, baby.
You know, on the campuses, you know, we weren't worried about the police or anything, and
Mm,
it was harmless, just like they now discovering how harmless it is now. But
yeah, yeah, oh
you know,
yeah.
it was just a
Matter of
culture.
fact, I think the school, I think the school felt better when we would preferred for us to smoke reefer than they did for us to drink,
Or do
because
anything
you
harder.
got a bunch of drunks running around there. You know, it's the stories I can tell you about that.
Or
But when we smoked
psychedelic
the
stuff.
joint, you would just sit there and play jazz and talk
Yeah.
about who's on the record. You know, that's it. There wasn't nobody want to fight nobody. Did
Nobody wanted
nobody
to
want,
fight
you
after that. You might fight over food, but
know? Over what was it? I had some Ritz crackers, no, some saltine crackers and hot sauce. Didn't have nothing else to eat. And I'm saying, man, they got oh shit, I
listen,
need some food. Oh,
somebody knock on the door and
oh
you get real quiet. I'm
yeah,
not
that
sharing
hot
this.
sauce. Oh God, those were the good old days. But I tell you what ended up happening. Um, we had the Commodores decided that they were going to go to Japan. You may remember before they really got big, they were going to go to Japan. They needed a side orchestra kind of thing going on, and Billy Perry got me involved with them, and I went over there. We started playing. They had bought this house, and we were practice over there. Come time to get ready to go to Japan, I called my mother. I said, Mama, I'm with this group. She said, Oh Lord, here he goes again with another one. Because she remember I used to play with different little groups down in Eminons and all that group down in Portsmouth. She said, I
Mhm.
tell you what, baby, if you go with this group to Japan, I will not pay your tuition anymore. Okay? But if you stay and finish, I'll continue your tuition. Oh, I had to think it through, had to think
What
it
a
through.
decision to make. But
Had to
you had
think that
no
was hard.
had no idea, no the
Didn't
success
have a
of
clue. So,
Commodore.
bird in the hand is
Yeah.
worth six in the bush. So I said, all right, I'ma stay. They go on up, they come back May 15, 1976 comes. We in Tuskegee. I walk across the stage. We at one of the restaurants. You know how families gather for all
Mhm.
the festivities of graduation. And we sitting there eating, and my mother gets up. She says, Wes, I'm so proud of you. You've just accomplished so much. You finished Tuskegee, didn't finish where you started because I was in vet med at first,
Mhm.
but you finished after 5 years. She said, I just got one question though. Of all the times that you never listened to me, why would you pick the time that you're supposed to play with the Commodores to listen to? She said, if that was as backwards as I could
Yeah.
ever
That could have been one of those few times you didn't listen.
do,
But like you said, you had no idea, I mean, you could have done that and
and been
rise
stuck in
playing with
Japan.
the Commodores or come back home and it took another 2 years to get out of
Yeah,
testing, so
exactly.
you never know.
Exactly.
But that's one
You
of those things,
never know.
you know,
But I got to hang with Tommy McClure. He was the lead guitar player for them, and when they
mhm,
would go on tour, he would leave me. He had a lime green Volkswagen. I'll never forget, a convertible, and he would leave it with me when
mm.
he would go on tour. That shit, boy, that
You know
was that.
the guy with the beard? He had the
Uh,
full beard? Oh, okay.
he wore glasses like my matter
Okay.
of fact. People used to say we looked alike,
Mhm.
and he would tell people I was his little brother,
Yeah.
and he would leave me the car. And you talking about a panty popper, baby? I get in that Volkswagen.
Fanny Poppins.
I get in that Volkswagen and
Goodness
ride around
gracious,
campus.
lime green Volkswagen,
Yes,
with
sir. Yes,
convertible?
sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
I remember a guy had a convertible Volkswagen at Union, and he was a basketball player. And when I first got there, they had a freshman basketball team, and I played on that for a while, and we played. Went to play against Elizabeth City and Virginia State, playing against Leroy Coker. I mean
Oh
Norfolk
yeah.
Lake. But that was before they had a girls team, and I did that for a while. But this one of these basketball players had a convertible Volkswagen, and it would be about 5, 8, 8 people in that little Volkswagen, and all 6'5", and
No, actually you could load a Volkswagen up, man.
yeah,
One of my
yeah.
roommates had one. Debbie had one. I grew up with. I mean, not grew up, but when I was in college, I had three women roommates: Debbie, Vicky, and Kathy.
You had 3
And
what? Women roommates?
yeah, three women
Okay,
roommates.
and
We
this was
lived
in the
off campus.
70s.
This
Tuskegee
was in the
or
70s.
off campus. Oh, okay, I
Oh
thought
yeah,
you
we were off campus now.
oh, okay, I
But Hampton has started co-ed dormitories.
yeah. Yeah, I think Norfolk
Tuskegee
State
we
did.
had co-ed visitation. We hadn't gotten to the
We
point
had
down there that you could live together. But
well,
Hampton
what our co-ed visitation was climbing in the windows. That was our co-ed. We were Virginia Union was a religious school,
yeah,
base. And the only time you had co-ed visitation was on Sundays, and that we had to have the door open.
yeah.
And so our co-ed visitation was climbing through the windows and avoiding the campus police. So that's the way that went.
I came to see you one time, didn't I? Who was your roommate at Union? Because I
I
remember
had a
coming to
few,
your.
Ed Smith was one
That's
time,
who it
and
was. That's
Ed
who it
Smith,
was.
and
When you
all
and
of
Ed were roommates.
yeah, and every roommate I had became a pastor.
Really?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Ed
I
became one,
remember
and,
going to
other
y'all
guys.
room
Yeah,
because y'all had beads up in the room. I remember that you had beads at the door, and you walked through there, the strobe light. I was like, "Ooh, y'all get off up in this tip."
and that was that was during the '70s. It was all about
Yeah,
psychedelic, and
yeah, yes,
beads and the lights and the black lights and all that kind of stuff.
because see, Tuskegee didn't go back. Hampton and Tuskegee were the last colleges in Hampton Roads to go back. I think we went back on like January the 20th or the January
Yeah,
25th,
we went
21st.
back right after
Yeah,
the new year, but
yeah,
our year ended before every other college. So I would come home and go straight to Norfolk State and mess with those guys because
yeah, yeah.
we'd be out by the 1st of May because
Mm,
we went back so early.
yeah, because
Every year.
Hampton didn't go back to January 31st.
Yeah, I mean,
So actually, for
you could
me,
get
it
a
got
job.
boring because everybody was in school, everybody
Yeah,
was gone. So I was like basically home by myself, except for me and the people from Hampton. And my
yeah.
girlfriend Marilyn was there, but we broke up after the first year of college, and because I went in one direction, she was trying to study. But it was just it was just amazing to me how long. That's how I came up to you. That's how I came up to see you and
Yeah,
Ed
yeah,
up there,
yeah.
man. Yeah,
A lot of people came through. Yeah, I didn't visit a lot. I think I went to Shaw because that first year, the girlfriend I was dating, she was in the band, and we was kind of still together, but we knew once we went to college,
it was over. It was
it
done.
was over. But we tried to
Done.
keep that connection for a little while,
Yeah.
and we visited each other homecoming, and but after that, it was just, I mean, it was a whole different environment away from home, and long term relationships was not gonna work
Yeah.
at 18,
Yeah, buddy. Shoot.
but
I was in
remain
culture
friends.
shock. After I
Remain,
finished Tuskegee, though, I got into some culture shock and uh, working with white people. I never worked with them before. I didn't understand them. They were this supreme being, supposedly, or something.
yeah,
They smart. They're all smart. They're smart people.
yeah, and yeah, they didn't even respect black college grads.
No.
they might have just had a high school education and still felt like they were
Yeah,
superior.
well,
To
when I worked at State Farm for a couple of years
Yeah,
as a
you
claims
were
agent. The year my
claims
father
adjuster, right?
died.
Yeah,
Yeah, the year my father died. I mean, my mother died, and I'll never forget it. I had a supervisor to ask me, "Wes, why did you go to Tuskegee? You're a pretty smart guy." And you could have gone to any school of your choice. There was always University of North Carolina, University of Virginia, those good schools. Everybody, we were in the break room, and everybody in the break room got up and walked out. Because they say Ashley Watts worked there. He said, "Where's everybody got up?" Because we didn't want to see the bloodshed that was about to go
yeah.
down in there.
So he just stepped on it then, and
Yeah,
it's
but
amazing that same
I
kind of
tell you what,
conversation.
I didn't get mad. I reached into, I invoked the spirit of Martin Luther King, and I said, Barry, Craig, it's the difference is at those big old schools like that, you become a mere number. I said, and you went to one number, so your number was number 933.
Right.
And throughout your 4 years of being there, professors never knew who you were. They just gave you a grade and you were there by yourself. So now you don't know how to even carry on a conversation with anyone because if you had been with me at Tuskegee, they looked at the whole person. They gave me how to have a conversation, how to
Mhm.
thought. I took courses like the history of philosophy and the philosophy of
Oh, yeah.
history,
Yeah,
so
we
that
had
I
the
know that
religion and
I
all
don't
that.
ask dumbass questions like that to people.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he was like, "Oh, oh." I said, yeah, you might want to send when you had children. Don't send them to them big old schools. Send them somewhere where they can be taught and not just
Mhm.
the numbers. Send them somewhere that people are going to care about who that child is, how he's living, and they're going to keep him in check and make sure. Mr. Fears' mother fed Daryl and I our first time in Tuskegee, you know,
Yeah, 'cause
and and
that's where
and
he was from. That's where he
yeah,
was
he was
from.
from. He was born and raised in Tuskegee, Alabama,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's what HBCUs do. They come and even at your big ones like Howard and
Mhm,
Hampton. Howard is one of the few schools, let alone HBCUs, in the country to have football and a strong athletic department, but they also got law, they got medicine, they got dentistry, and
mhm.
they got theology. It's not many schools. Harvard is
That
one of
have
them.
all those, yeah,
Got all of
different
those. It's
different
not, I mean,
opportunities.
there's only maybe five in the entire nation that has all of that going for it. They usually have to substitute somewhere or another. Yale doesn't have theology
Mhm.
or a strong football program. Uh, who else? Columbia got a strong graduate program, but they don't have medicine or law. So it's rare to find a school that carries all of that stuff, so that when you get out in the world, then you can come to cities like Atlanta and
Mm.
you know how to sit and talk to people. I was in Portsmouth. I was a big fish, especially when I was working at Norfolk State. I
Yeah,
was
we'll get into
a
that.
little
Yeah.
pond. I carried a whole. Woo, Lord have mercy! It was a lot of your class members and their children would come talk to me because I did financial. I didn't do financial aid, but I maneuvered. I was one of those people that maneuvered and helped people to get in school because it was an education. This was important. It was my passion. And
Right.
that was one of the greatest jobs I ever had. It added 20 years to my life running down behind them young kids. Except for like the night I had, I got a call at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had to go on campus because this little boy fell out. And I used to turn little boy. He fell out a window and the tower was on the third floor. And I get there, and his legs are broken and sitting there, and they got the ambulance and everything coming. And I said, "Son, what happened?" He said, "Because I thought he was depressed and was trying to kill himself jumping out the window. I was going to tell him, go up to the fifth floor. Don't do it from the third and don't worry."
Mm.
But
Mm.
what happened was, he said, they bet me $1. I said, bet you $1 what? They bet me $1 I couldn't hang from the window, from the third floor window without falling. Boy, I was hot as hell. Slim, I
He broke
called
his
that
leg
boy.
and lost $1 too.
It got
Didn't
me
get the
out my
dollar.
bed at 3 o'clock in the morning. I called his mama. I said, Miss Smith, don't get upset. Your son is right here. He's not dead, but he's close to it because I'm about to break my foot off in his butt. So I said, tell your mama what you just told me. And he told her, she said, Mr. Van, I will pay for the surgery to get your foot out his ass if you want to go ahead on and do that. I'm so sorry that man. She said, I'll be there tomorrow. So that was one of those things and because of Norcom, because of Portsmouth, I was able to take what I was taught and give it for 13 years, give it to those kids at Norfolk State. Then when I
Yeah,
got
all
to
that was a
Atlanta,
part of the journey. All that was a part of the journey, which started even before Norcom. You mentioned about us meeting at the Sahib with the
yeah,
Jack and Jills.
yes,
Even those experiences at our young age, and you said that we didn't get into grown folks' business, but we were exposed to that kind
hmm,
of environment, and we could look back and see these people. Which many of them became our idols. You
right,
know, watching these coaches and it was people in different levels. I mean, you had professionals, you had the doctors, the lawyers, you had the shipyard workers, you had the mailmen, you had all different diverse group of people with different jobs, but all of them held a certain type of integrity to them, that we could look up to and say, well, I want to be that, even if it was the mailman, I want to be like him. Even if I didn't
Yes,
go
sir.
into profession, I want to be like him because he comes home, puts that mail bag down, and then he goes out there and coaches little league, you know.
That's
And
right.
so
That's
all
right.
those people, so all that started back then, and it leads up, and it added to, especially your journey from VA to GA.
Yeah.
You came through Norfolk State. We're kind of winding down now, but I want to. What happened? Something happened at Norfolk State that you met somebody that you're with today. I think it happened during the time you were at Norfolk State,
Yeah,
and
my cousin did
this
that.
particular person this particular
My
person
cousin
happened
did
to
that.
yeah, did. This person happened to grace the little town of Tidewater with her presence after coming from having a national profile on CNN, and she
Global.
came down.
Global.
Was it
Global. Yeah,
WTJR?
we
And
my
we thought
cousin
that was a clue when we
my
got her. We
cousin
thought,
Tim,
oh man,
we always falling on our family. My cousin Tim did it. We had this Tim Reed Celebrity Weekend, and
mhm.
now for
That was a
years,
big thing in Norfolk State for a while. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and for years though, I used to watch her on CNN headline news every morning, get ready to go to work. And I would often tell my first wife, I said, "Ooh, I'd love to meet her one day. But I just want to, I believe she got a conversation that we can sit and talk." And I used to ask Tim, I said, "Tim, see if we can get her down here for the celebrity weekend." He said he'll see what we can do. Well, one year, the Norfolk State Journalism Department
Mm.
announced that they were having Lynn Vaughn to speak at their annual journalism conference that they had at Norfolk State. I said, "Oh my God, we got her." And Tim happened to be in town that weekend because he was on the board. And he went over and asked her if she would come for the weekend and we take her because she had just left there and she left. We got there, man, and I never forget it. She gets there, Daphne, Tim's wife says, "Well, she's here. You get to meet." I said, "Oh my God," because she's one of the few celebrities that I was really in awe about. And I'd met Will Smith, Ike Hayes, all these people, but I just that Lynn Vaughn had something and I thought she was tall. I thought she was about 6'1", 6'2", because she had this big booming voice. Here comes this little titty lady with these black and white pants on. They had little black roses. She had this beautiful black and white blouse. See, I remember to this day, man. And this was 1999 or 2000. And she came down, but I was busy because I had to go to the airport. Some more celebrities were coming in, and I'm handling all this. I give her a hug and say, "Ooh, it's wonderful meeting you," and I take off running because I gotta go. She said, Daphne said she asked her, "Well, who is that? Who that fine brother there?" She said, "Well, that's Tim's cousin." So, oh, he must be important because he ain't had time to talk to me. Yeah, he's a little busy. That next day, that Friday night, we had stuff going on. That next day, early that morning, Daphne says, "Wes, did you send Lynn those 2 dozen of yellow roses?" I said, "I ain't got no money to be sending no dozen yellow roses to nobody like that." Because by this time, my first wife and I were separated. And I said, "No." She said, "Well, why didn't you ask your cousin for some money so he could get you? He would have got to help you." I said, "Well, I don't ask a cousin for nothing. Hell, he's putting my daughter through school. I ain't asking for no more." So, come to find out, she did. Some guy that Friday night swooped her up, took her out. They dated, whatever. I was like, okay, I'd have missed a no one. There we go.
Mm.
Boom. Long story less long, as she says. She gets a job at Channel 3. And because one of the anchors is out on maternity leave, and they asked her if she would come and substitute. So she did. Then they, while she was doing that, they asked her if she would work there permanently, and she said okay. She bought a house, but every time it was time for her to go to a speaking engagement, MC a program, her boyfriend was always a no-show. He couldn't. He for some. Everybody really can't handle celebrity. You got
Sure.
to know how to. If you sitting at a dinner table and people want to take pictures, you can't get mad because
Yeah.
those are the viewers. That's the reason you sitting in this fancy restaurant. So you
Yeah.
take the picture. You take the picture, and that's
You have
what
to
I
know,
did.
you have to know that going in, that this
Yeah,
person,
yeah. So you know
yeah,
that that's what
where
you're
we
gonna
go,
do with.
they're gonna recognize you. Occasionally, somebody might recognize me, but that's not gonna happen when you
That's
with a
right.
celebrity like that, and you have to know that going in. If you can't handle it, you need to stay away from it.
Don't
And
go.
I guess he couldn't handle it.
You don't if I'm gonna tell you this game here, you can't handle this game right here because whatever I got in big trouble down here in Atlanta once because somebody lied about a case that I was involved in when I was working at the DA's office, and they said what happened. They said I told this lady that if she testified in the case and didn't have sex with me, I'd have her murdered.
Mm.
I ain't got that. That ain't nowhere near me. But how did the paper run it? Not the paper, but did Fox and who else was it? NBC channel, the locals here. They ran it. Lynn Vaughn's husband, Wesley Vann, said I wasn't even in this, and that's the first name that they gonna call. Well, see, it brought prominence to the story. So I've learned now over the years that it's been great. It's because of her. And you talking about somebody that loves you unconditionally. It's that Lynn Vaughn. That's my baby. She and I love her. And we've
But
been together now. How long we been together? We got married in '02. We've been together 21 years now.
yeah, but Wesley, I have to say this. She was celebrity and all, but you brought a lot to the table anyway. I mean, your
Yeah.
personality and your experience going into it. Especially dealing with the Tim Reed uh, uh, events all those years and meeting all those different celebrities. So you felt right at home. It wasn't like you had to say, "Oh man, I'm starstruck," but you had already been there, even though you might have been, but you had
Hmm.
already experienced that. So that's probably why the combination worked so well. I
Yeah,
mean,
it did.
you weren't intimidated by her or upset if she got the attention. You brought something that was, you brought something to the table as well. So,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
why the
And then coming from Portsmouth,
yeah.
we good or bad, the Van family was a name, was a prominent name in the city.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
you growing up, there was always somebody to say, you go to a little girl's house and her daddy say, that's one of them Van boys. And either the
Yeah.
mama say, let him in, or the daddy say, put him out. But you're right. You know, I've had the opportunity. I've been blessed. I call it being blessed, actually, to walk in the footsteps of legends like John Lewis. When you sitting at his dinner table, not just the dinner table, but you sitting in the house in the kitchen eating a snack and talking to his son or talking to his wife Lillian. Uh, and it's just conversation, just regular conversation. Ain't talking about nothing important, just something we saw on TV. To talk to Bill Campbell, the former mayors, and Shirley Franklin, and I've had the opportunity to meet with all of them and presidents too, ambassadors from different countries. And I told Andy just the other day, we just lost another legend yesterday, Judge Arrington, who was one of the builders of Atlanta.
Mhm.
And then they did a documentary called Bow Leg. So if you ever fly on Delta, you can see the Bow Leg documentary about Judge Arrington and how he built the city. But Lynn felt, I'll tell you what happened. She felt confident, she felt comfortable, and she felt loved and protected. they being a state employee, you ain't never gonna make the money that a celebrity people make.
Mhm.
That TV money is just a different thing. But if you get that out the way and just work with, and I recommend this in all relationships, and you've been married, oh my God, you've been married 40 something years yourself, almost 50
Yeah,
now, right?
yeah. Well, well,
Yeah. So
41,
yeah.
the
So
second time.
uh, it's one of those things where we it's the relationship and it's not 50-50. It's 100-100. You got to be 100% in.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not an easy person to be married to. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I'm just not. I like going out on Friday night. That's what I do.
Mhm.
But that's my only one night. And when you establish that early, you can have it. Then everybody and communication and just talking and
Is
letting
the
folks
key.
know what's
Right.
going on. I had cancer. I had colon cancer.
Yeah.
Almost died. And matter of fact, they gave me 45 minutes to live. That was my length that I had on that because
Wait a
it was
minute.
about
Wait a minute. Back up.
yeah,
You've heard people say, I had 6 months to live. You had
yeah,
45 minutes?
45 minutes. Not
So what?
it was
It had to be.
Halloween. It was Halloween 2009. And men, we don't go to the doctor. We don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
We bad. We get a piece of duct tape, wrap it around, and say it'll be
Yeah.
all right. Finally, they take me to the emergency room because my stomach was just bloated and I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling just give me some X-Lax. I'll be all right.
Mhm.
I get up in there, and they said, "Mr. Van, you have a tumor. You got cancer. We got to operate." I said, "Okay. Well, how long do I have?" And they said 45 minutes to an hour. And I said, no, 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 no. I don't mean how long do I have to make the decision whether to have surgery or not. What I'm asking is if I don't have the surgery, how long can I live without it? The doctor said, he sat down, he said 45 minutes to an hour. Your tumor is attached to your bladder and your pelvic bone. And by the time you walk from this room to your car, your bladder will be open, the urine will poison your system, and you'll be dead sitting behind the wheel. It was Halloween night. I said, well, trick or treat, baby, let's get to
Yeah.
go.
That's the thing. Wow, that's the first time I heard, like 45 minutes,
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
and
that was
how
and
fortunate, that is that you were there at that time because and you're right, a lot of us men, I went through that too. I ignored some things for a long time and had to end up getting a brand new heart.
yeah,
That's
yes,
how
sir.
I ignore things. So that's why I preach people, especially men, when you feel those little things, check it out. Don't try to wave
Go
it
play
off.
with it.
I'm a man, I can handle it, because
Yeah.
it can be just worse. And
You
it
know,
some
we
of
did a we did a
them,
campaign to get men to go to the doctor one time, and they had what was it called? Put on your robe. And I told them, I said, and they were talking about the little hospital robe you put on to go get checked, get your prostate checked, and all that. I said, men need to put on the robe, but real men would put on the robe and go find out what's going on.
what's going on.
And so that's that we do need to we as men, especially black men, we need to do much better about medical, because we'll sit around. I catch myself every now and then now. Well, I don't hear too well out of one of my ears, and Lynn
Yeah.
wears me to death to go get it. And I say, yeah, I'm gonna go, but see, I can't hear women voices.
You hear everything else, but the women's voices seem like
Yeah.
something happened there.
Yeah, I just sit right there, so he can't hear me now. So I got selective hearing. So that's what I do.
Yeah,
But
you really have to pay attention because a lot of people depend on us, and it's not necessarily financially, emotionally. People,
right,
if we're not here, they might miss whatever. People can stand on their own sometime after we're gone, but emotionally, it's hard to someone to leave this earth before their time, at least the way you think. So it's important that
right.
we take advantage of all the opportunities we have to check things
Mhm.
out in advance, So, but anyway, hey,
Yeah.
Wes, we're gonna wind down now, and I have to bring you back because there's still so much we can talk about,
Oh
with the
God,
with the
yeah.
health law. the health part and everything like that. But I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that journey from VA to GA, and
Yeah.
a lot of things happened in between. A lot of things happened while you were here, but we touched on the surface of a lot of that. So hopefully, let me do a little some shout outs to some people that were watching. Moses Hardy said, "Slim, tell Wes he married up." That's and shout out to Ashley Watts who was watching, Linnell Spruill, Roberta Carter,
Mm,
Dwayne
damn.
Fisher, Eric Sherman, Vincent Epps, Larry
Mm,
Donnell was yes, Daphne Warren, Valerie Watson Anderson, Marilyn
mm.
Grant, Kim, Harvey George. Harvey George, you're a VUU man. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you, brother. And Jack Walker, Francis, and another VU, Diane Ricks Jones was watching, and she was at Union when I was there. Neither one of us really remember each other, but she told me that her father and my father were roommates at Union when they were there,
Mm,
and sort of bridged that connection that we had. She was watching
mm.
Dante Orlando Brown, Warren Franklin, who lives down there in Atlanta, Pam
Yeah, he
Walker,
out here.
Tim Casey graduated with you, Larry Daughtry. I said Ashley Watts. But anyway, shout out to those few that were watching and others that didn't let me know that they were watching. But we appreciate you, Wes, and it's always good. I
Hey,
always enjoy conversations with you. And I forgot about how far we went back to the Jack and Jill's at the
yeah.
Sahib Club, and people from Portsmouth know about the Sahib Club. That sometimes we had to
Saeed,
have our
baby.
own in order
You know,
to back
I
then.
never
Plymouth
could
Woods.
find that place. I got lost every time going out there. Just
Yeah,
it was
you
always hard
pass
to
by.
find.
Yeah, especially if you went at night, and even in the
Yeah.
daytime, it was hard. It was back then, and that's probably when they built it. That's probably where they could one of the pieces of land that they didn't mind. Oh yeah, y'all can have that. You
Yeah. Yeah.
know,
Yeah. That
back in
was
the
one of
woods,
them.
out the way.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway,
anytime you want me back, just call
yeah,
me. We'll have cocktails and conversation, baby.
yes, and we will, and I appreciate it. And I told the people it'd probably be entertaining and informative. Indeed, it was, and we
Mhm.
appreciate you again. And thanks again, and we'll be
All
signing
right.
off.
All right.
All right, we want to thank everybody for listening, and we appreciate you to the Slim Nation 101s with our special guest, Wesley Vann. He is from right here in the city of Portsmouth, VA. And we'll see you next time. And as always, remember, be aware, be involved, and most of all, be involved. I said that wrong. Be aware, be informed, and most of all, be involved. Thanks a lot. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time right here on the Slim Nation 101s.
Night night.
All right, take care, Wes.
All right, man.